And they're on? I'm ready?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Bontrayer. I'd like to welcome you today to today's telephone town hall. Congressman will deliver some opening remarks, and then we'll open up the line for questions. Just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, press 0 on your phone keypad at any time. If you need assistance, please don't hesitate to contact our Albuquerque office at 505-346-6781. Also, be sure to check out the Congresswoman's website at luonggrisham.house.gov. With that, I'd like to introduce Congresswoman Michelle Luong Grisham.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope that you'll help welcome Eric. I think that you can tell it's his first day. Eric, we're going to tease you a little. Paul Ryan and Eric and everyone says Luan because I haven't taught them how to say Lujan, but I will do that. And we are delighted to have this teletown hall. And I hope that you can hear us just fine. We're having an incredible thunderstorm here in Washington, D.C., and I hope that the monsoon season continues productively. No real flooding, but great effective moisture for the district and for all of New Mexico. We wanted to reach out today specifically to seniors. Certainly it's not limited to retirees, but really want to get a sense from you about pressing issues, where Congress is headed or where we haven't successfully moved. I want to give you an update on the VA and some important health care pieces of legislation that at least being contemplated, and give you a sense even about where we are in terms of budget negotiations and budget ideas for the upcoming session. Now, I know that Eric reminded you that you can call our office at any time. That's 505-346-6781. We have staff who can assist individuals with any kind of issue that you would like us to attend to. If you want to ask a question, hit 0, and we'll get you in the queue. And really, this is about me hearing from you today. So I'm ready for the first caller with the first statement or question. All right, so I know that folks are still dialing in. I'm trying to make sure that I've got the right framework. We are voting in about an hour, and so I hope that we can do a complete teletown hall. I want to make sure that folks know that this is not limited to retirement, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans, or any retiree issues, that any question is something that we would be more than happy to have a discussion about or statement. We want to get a sense about your priorities and make sure that there's an opportunity for everybody that we're working for in the district to feel like they've got a voice in the things that we're doing here, in our priorities, and in the decisions that we make. And in many of these town halls, we hear from a constituent with a particular problem, and then we're able to get that problem addressed by using the resources in our office to do so. Do we have any callers with questions yet? No? Okay. It's a weird thing to be on one side of a phone call and to have all of my constituents on the other side. Today I spoke at a conference of underwriters, actuaries, talking about health care and long-term care insurance, and I announced at that forum just a few hours ago that we're introducing shortly, we hope to make it this week, an idea for caregiving that would ease the burden of family caregivers, create a career pipeline for young people, and really address from a national budget and national investment perspective, starting to solve the problem for long-term care services for disabled adults and older persons and their families. As a caregiver myself for my mother, I know all too well the burdens that places. And in fact, if you just look at the basic statistics, On average, Medicare beneficiaries are spending well more than $3,000 in out-of-pocket costs in Medicare. For many people, that's still the difference between being able to meet their copay for a particular visit or procedure, or for being able to pay for the copay for their Part D drug, or if it's a drug that's not on their formulary, getting access to the drug at all. So there are still so many gaps in so many of these services and programs that are intended to be comprehensive, but quite frankly aren't. One of the questions that was asked today is, what are we really doing about having a productive conversation or strategy about shoring up Social Security? And my response to the underwriter national group today is that really this has been one of those signature issues that's been part of the divide in Congress. Where are we going to be making investments in the future and stability of this country? Do we recognize that Social Security is an economic engine in our communities? It's something that we talk about often when we talk about individuals who require nursing home care and have to give up all of their Social Security income in order to receive that care. Often that leaves a spouse or dependent at home without sufficient resources to take care of themselves. I don't know that we've accurately told the story about how these benefits work, how they don't work, what some of the gaps are, and what we need to start doing to shore them up so that they're financially secure for generations to come. Part of doing that is making sure that we create an environment where the economy in general is doing better in this country, and that's certainly been part of the debate here in Washington, D.C. about immigration reform. I have long hoped that we wouldn't be distracted by many of the current crises, including the children that are now coming across our borders, that eliminate the opportunity for us in this Congress, which ends in December, at the end of the year, to have a meaningful vote and a meaningful effort towards comprehensive immigration reform, which every nonpartisan economist and the Congressional Budget Office says will add to our economy, not take away from it, which means Congress and state policymakers then have resources to make meaningful decisions about how to shore up our not only our safety net programs, but really the infrastructure for retirement and related health care programs over the long haul. I'm happy to entertain any questions about that. Or anything else that I haven't covered in these introductory remarks. It looks like we do have a question from a caller, so we'll take that now.
Once again, in case you just joined us, your live telephone town hall. If you'd like to ask a question, please press 0 on your phone keypad at any time. Our first question comes from Gloria Chavez. Gloria, you're on the phone.
Yes, my name is Gloria Chavez. I'm a resident of Bernalillo, New Mexico. We just got, okay, I'm going to talk about insurance. Loveless just sold out to Blue Cross Blue Shield. We were told that nothing was going to change, but as of June 5th, we found out that our deductibles went from $5 to $80 on our test strips for diabetics, which I am. One of my husband's prescriptions, they're not providing it at all anymore. We were told that it would cost us $250 just for that prescription. My husband is planning on retiring now in August. He may not be able to because we are not going to be able to afford our prescriptions. So if there's anything that you can do about Blue Cross Blue Shield doing this to thousands of people, especially us elderly who are starting to, what we were told would be our golden years after retirement, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I would appreciate your help in any way, shape, or form that you can get Blue Cross to Blue Shield to abide by what they said, that they were not going to change anything that Loveless had set up before, and they did it the first week.
So,
thank you.
Gloria, thank you for your concern and your comment. So is this in the senior plan that Loveless was offering that Blue Cross has now picked up, or is this in a private insurance package that's not tied to a plan?
This is tied to my husband's employment right now.
Okay.
But we had planned on keeping the insurance afterwards. But since they sold out, everything has tripled in price. You know, there's no way that I can afford to pay $80 for diabetic strips to test my sugar when they were $5. Now they're going to be $80. We're going to be living on a very fixed income afterwards. And my husband is 67 years old, and I mean, he's put up retiring until now. He's planning on retiring now in August. But the way things are going, he's talking about not retiring because, I mean, $250 for one medication, $80 for my test strips, and $70 for metformin. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, we can do this.
No, and you have highlighted one of the large fallacies, not only about retiree health care plans that are offered to employees and Medicare, and the combination, that if you have a combination, it can minimize those gaps, but it doesn't do it entirely, and metformin and too many other of the diabetic prescription drugs, either those oral medications and even some of the specialty injectables are now, the co-pays are not affordable to a retired population. Two things to know. First, I'll give you the bad news. Congress has very little control, in fact, none at all, over what insurance companies do, basically, in terms of their rates. That's all that's done by the states. There is legislation that is now being developed in Congress, and I'm part of that is looking at requiring rate protections for consumers, because I agree with you. You cannot change, first of all, you can't change midstream, and secondly, these increases, not just for retirees, but having access to health care or insurance is only as good as the affordability of that access. So there's got to be something done about that. We should, through our office, have someone specifically look at two things. One, filing a complaint about this particular situation and maybe others to the New Mexico Insurance Superintendent. And two, looking for other benefits that might pick up the gaps so that we're taking care of your particular problem while we solve it for many other beneficiaries. Gloria, would you be willing to have us work with you directly?
Yes, we just applied for Part A and B of our Social Security.
Okay.
And I spoke to them about Part D, but that really doesn't cover anything either. You know, it wasn't going to benefit us to get into Part D.
I would be surprised if it didn't provide some benefits, but we need to look, and we would be happy to do that. Gloria, you can give me your phone number now, and I'll have someone call you, or you can call us at 346-6781. Which do you prefer?
I'll give you mine.
Okay.
Area code. Okay. Thank you.
No, give me your number.
867-5210.
Okay.
Area code 505.
All right. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Gloria. Our next question comes from Edith Dunlap. Please go ahead.
Hi, Edith.
Okay. Hi. I want to know, we're senior citizens and on Medicare and pension, and we recently got our P&M bill for $200. Now, I'm asthmatic, and I have to have air conditioning when it gets real hot, and the bill is extremely high, and I called P&M, and they said they have a program, but what we get is more than what they are willing to allow. We're not poverty, according to them. We do more than $20,000, but what do I do? I'm asthmatic. And the other thing, I have glaucoma, and I have eye problems, and I need to get glasses too, but they're not paid for, and they're very expensive. I need special glasses because I have problems with contrast, and I have photophobia. What do I do? What does somebody like me in the middle do?
Well, let's talk about that from a generic, more general thing, and then I want to talk to you about what we can do specifically. I mean, these are issues that I think that members of Congress ought to be paying more attention to. We're really afraid of creating more benefits because we don't know how to pay for them. I think that we need to recognize that if we don't have retirees in a position to have a quality of life, then you lose your independence. If you lose your home and your independence, that's a much more expensive endeavor for this country than if we were to provide intermediate supports. And so I really appreciate that we've had 2 calls really raising. It is very difficult. You're on a fixed income. Day-to-day living costs go up. And there really isn't an opportunity to try to get any redress for those. And we've really been shying away in Congress. This is my first term, as I think most of my listeners know. But we don't want to make any investments in these social programs. And in fact, in the budget that was passed, we're calling it Ryan Budget 2. It's the second led by that member of Congress, Paul Ryan from Wisconsin. They want to cut what we call the social safety net. So there are programs that help defray the costs of utilities, things like LIHEAP and energy assistance, and creating federal support to states to then have bigger and broader programs so that they're not so limited that you have to be at the poverty or below those guidelines. Because if you're 10 cents over, you don't qualify, but 10 cents isn't going to pay for a $200 utility bill. So I want to let you know that those are the kinds of things that we're fighting for, and I want you to think about those things. And when you write letters to members of Congress, and when you ask me to be very clear about my priorities, and these are the things I think Congress should pay attention to, because they save us money in the long run, and they're really about human dignity. In the short term, we need to look at what the Department on Aging and Long-Term Services is doing. I will tell you some more bad news before I focus on some good news. P&M has to be very careful about reducing rates because they're not really allowed to by state law. So they can have, as you now know, they've got a hardship program if you're at the poverty. They can also, create a situation where you're paying. They can defer payments. They can do monthly payments, but in the end, they're still going to hold you responsible for those increased utility costs. There are a lot of nonprofit groups, including Jewish Family Services, who had programs, and the Albuquerque Senior Citizens Network. They have programs to help pay for folks who cannot meet their utility and some of their non-covered but prescription-required services, assets, or durable medical devices, including things like glasses and, in many cases, dentures. I need to have my office find out what programs are still available, because with Congress failing to act and with states refusing to make seniors their priority, they haven't been putting money into these programs. When I was the director and the secretary of aging, we received very productive investments from the New Mexico State Legislature to defray the costs for seniors so they could stay independent in their homes. I really believe in that. So let's see if we can't find some programs for you. And same thing, I'm going to need you to give me your phone number so we can call you, or you can call us at your convenience. And we'll help navigate this to the highest degree, and then help me get Congress to pay attention to retirees so that we're making the right kinds of decisions so that you can afford to have a retirement that's based in respect and dignity, in not asking you to suffer between having food on the table, keeping your heating and cooling on, paying rent or a mortgage, or paying for your transportation costs. Will you help me do that?
I sure will. I have one other thing. Long-term care, they have the homes where people go. They're very expensive. What do we do for people like that who aren't really sick, but they need some help? Retirement homes.
Well, so are you talking about like the senior living kinds of things? So they're like senior living communities, can be a home or an apartment. They might not. You could buy assisted living, but you wouldn't do that unless you needed it. Those are becoming more and more popular. And yes, my mother lives with me because on $1,300 a month Social Security, she's not going to be able to afford that. I'm actually introducing not a housing bill, but a caregiver support bill that would create a whole new ready workforce for caregiving that would be at no cost to the people needing some support.
They could
go ahead.
Come in home and work with the people.
Yeah, absolutely, so that you could stay at home. There are a couple of programs that exist to keep people in their homes so that you don't have to move your retirement community. But for some people, you would actually feel better, do better, and that shouldn't be minimized. We're going to have to think of public and try to, if you can, set aside because I have my own notions of public housing when it really doesn't work. Crowded housing that's not very livable, very visitable. It's got families and kids. When you mix populations and even what we call today traditional senior housing, it's not very conducive to a larger retirement living investment. We're going to have to find public-private partnerships that have sort of graduated investments so that people even living on $2,400 a month could afford to buy in if they wanted to. But I will tell you that long-term care costs are an area that we're going to have to figure out in this country, because if every senior citizen reached out for housing or reached out for care, transportation, assistance with medications, dressing, bathing, if everybody reached out at once, it would be enough to entirely bankrupt the country. Almost $500 billion is the cost of what families are doing on their own. And they're running out of the ability and resources to do that. I think it's one of the number one things Congress ought to be investing their efforts in. Because if we don't find a way to deal with it, I think that would cause the collapse of the country. But if we keep senior citizens engaged in the community, as part of their families, living independently, I think that we actually will have real value in the entire economic effort, and we're treating seniors with respect and dignity. I mean, those were my priorities in getting elected.
By the way, I agree with you. I actually voted for you, so that's another thing. But
very nice of you. Thank you.
What I'm going to do, I will call. I have your office number. I will give a call. And can I just kind of talk? Are you ever in the office? I mean, I know you are, but are there times that I can come and talk to you?
Absolutely. You call that number, you tell them you want to see me, and they'll make that happen. And but don't wait for me, because I'm in D.C. the next several weeks. I want you then to start working on your particular issues right away, and then I work for you. I'm happy to meet with you anytime.
Well, because I'm interested politically. I want to fight.
This is an official call, so I'll make a call to you officially, and we'll get my unofficial folks to reach out to you too. Thank you for that invitation. That's very nice.
Well, I'm going to let you go. You have others. I will call your office.
All right. Okay? Thank you so much.
Once again, if you like to ask a question, press 0 on your phone keypad at any time. Our next question comes from Beth from Albuquerque.
Hi, Beth.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, although this isn't Beth.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. This is Teddy Rivera. And I have a question. One of the things that I do here in Albuquerque is I'm contracted with Albuquerque Heading Home, and you've heard of that, right?
Albuquerque Heading Home? I don't know that I have.
Okay. And what we do is we go out and physically find the homeless on the streets once every couple of years, and we create a list. We find the most medically vulnerable and disabled and people who are likely to die if they were left on the streets, and then we house them. And those who... Pardon me?
My ignorance, where do you provide housing for them?
We go through the Housing Coalition of New Mexico.
Okay, all right, okay.
And they get apartments,
okay,
which they pick out.
Okay.
Okay, and then in the last 4 years, in the last 3 years, we have housed probably over 350 people that were homeless for greater than a year. Anyway, the problem is that I ran across, my job is to apply for disability benefits for those people if they're not currently receiving benefits. And I ran into a situation with a gentleman who came over to this country from Juarez, Mexico when he was 3 years old, and he has lived here, graduated from Albuquerque High, worked here, has only been employed in the United States, and lost his permanent resident card, and he has been approved for disability benefits, and they're withholding his money until he gets the card, which opens up a whole different can of worms in getting that card, because deportation is so great these days. So people are really afraid to do anything with Homeland Security. So my question is, number one, why do they do that? Why does Social Security withhold that? And number two, what can we do about it?
Well, these are incredibly tough issues, and thank you for your expertise, and thank you for working on this, on taking care of the homeless populations. You know, I know that you know this, and New Mexico's having an increasing, and including Albuquerque in the district, an increasing homeless population with one of the fastest growing, women and their children, and in that women veterans and their children, and so it's a significant issue. I just introduced a bill to try to limit some of the restrictions on Social Security disability insurance. It doesn't fit this issue specifically. It was intended for folks with acute and terminal illnesses. They don't count cancer. They think that you can go right back to work, so they deny you benefits. And these cancer patients with really debilitating cancers lose their houses and their car. They can't do anything. They have no income.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
They live on $100, and the first 5 months they can't receive any income or benefits. It's outrageous. So I've introduced a bill on behalf, in the name of an Albuquerque resident, to prohibit that practice and make sure that those folks get access to what they need. Here, for your constituents, I mean, you're right. The best thing that we can do is to get the permanent, residency card, and so that you're eligible. Social Security, like so many other of the federal benefits, are restricted, which most people don't believe. They believe that most of the benefits, not the opposite, are available whether or not you're a citizen, and they're not. And as you know, even people with legal status, so documented immigrants who have legal status in the United States, which means they are working, they are paying into Social Security. They are prohibited for 5 years from accessing Medicaid benefits, purchasing insurance on the exchange, and I've actually got a bill called HEAL that would also eliminate that gap. So we have, for a long time in our public benefits system, really denied access to benefits to both legal status immigrants and undocumented. It's the reverse, as you know. It's not, as most people assume, that those benefits are available to to all individuals, regardless of residency and citizenship. They're not. What we do about it is I am hoping that the one benefit out of this incredibly tragic crisis with all of the Latin American children crossing the border is that we're really going to take a hard look at what's currently going on in deportation. So let me defend the administration. The administration's gotten more money from Congress. Certainly even before I got here, Congress was passing legislation that increased border investments in border security. That means that we've got the resources, specifically now able to detain, do the hearing, and move on deportation. That means that this administration, this president, has done far more deportations in his administration than prior presidents without immigration reform found themselves in, right? Because we've invested more money in that process, and we have invested more money in Homeland Security. I, of course, want comprehensive immigration reform because then that provides less fear and, I hope, a meaningful opportunity for people who have not committed a crime while they've been in the United States to have a fair and legitimate process, back of the line, pay your fines, pay your fees, to access citizenship and legal status of some kind while that's occurring. The best thing for your client is to work with our office to see what we can do to access appropriately these benefits so that we can get this person off the streets, which creates more liabilities, not only for the individual but for everybody else. And see if we can't find an exception to the proof, or we can minimize the fear associated. My office, I need to alert you, I think you already know the answer to this. We do not halt or stop deportations, that I am not allowed to interrupt the law, that if they know, I will tell you that I think that there is some appropriate, it's not even deference, that if there's an active case where we look like we can make the case legitimately under the boundaries of the law, they don't do, they're not active about that deportation. But we can't protect people who are in the queue or who would legitimately be deported. And so this is a really tough case. Absent figuring that out in the short term, we'd have to look at something other than disability insurance to provide income until we can look at another way to navigate for this particular client. But I don't have anything as meaningful as I would like to create the right end result for your particular constituent. And I would love to work with you directly on this case if you think that could be useful.
Yeah, I think it would be great. Well, actually, we do house them, and he's in an apartment now, but once he receives his benefits, then he will be responsible for a certain percentage of his rent. So we don't not house them because they have no money.
All right.
So he is in an apartment now.
Okay, so let's work on doing that income, and let us, same thing, if you would be so kind, Teddy, is to call my office. They'll be briefed. They're on this call. They'll be expecting your call, and they'll work on getting you a constituent services rep. And let's do everything we can. And you've given me yet another set of really important examples and information related to we've got to do much better on both our social safety net and on immigration policy that's meaningful.
Okay. Yeah, I agree because it's really sad. It's really sad, and the way we've become as Americans, it's just sad.
Well, when so many people in so many walks of life are struggling, I think that this is naturally what comes of that. So it's another reason state policymakers and federal policymakers have got to be willing to make investments in a place where we have a return on protecting and what I'm referring to is, this human capital, that we want to be a society that's compassionate, effective, and tries to provide equity. And I think that that's where we've lost our way, is that we're not sure how to provide equity. And I think there are many ways to do that. But one way not to do it is to ignore that we have these issues occurring at all.
Right. I agree. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Teddy.
Okay. Sorry about that for Beth. We got the wrong question, but we have her on the line now.
Hello?
Hi, Beth.
Hey, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm calling about Citizens United, and I want to know if you have any plans on how to reverse Citizens United. I'm terrified. The bottom line of all of these callers has been very personal, but I think that the money in the hands of a few have bought our politicians. I don't believe that you're one of them. And I think that we need public funding for our politicians so that we actually are the people. We are the bosses, and you do work for us. Right now, there's a handful on both sides of the aisle, but especially with the Kochs taking over, buying elections, buying everything involved with Citizens United, and this whole McCutcheon case that's going on, which is from what I understand, made it even easier for politicians to be bought, I guess, is how I need to say it. Anyway, I think it's vital. I think if we got rid of Citizens United, we could turn this country around. So how have you made any plans, or what is it you want us to do? I sign petitions constantly. Daily, I get 20, 30 requests from Democrats all over the country and the party for money. I want to give, but, my $10, $20 here or there, and it has to go to the vets, and it has to go to feed the homeless, and it has to go to here in Albuquerque. I only have so much money. I can't give as much as I would like to. So anyhow, I'll be quiet. I'd love to hear your ideas.
Citizens United gives me a great cause for concern as well. The Supreme Court decision in McCutcheon that basically said the current limits are a violation of freedom of speech also, I think, is another troubling, at least in my opinion, decision by the Supreme Court, where we're creating a political system that is based on just the influence of private money. And
yes.
That creates, by nature of that situation,
yes.
It doesn't lend itself to A, objectivity, and B, I think it creates an environment, particularly in the House, where we're running every 2 years, where we're not doing as much work substantively because too many members are having to sustain their campaigns because there's no other option.
That's right.
Fundraising. So, I want to give a shout out to my colleague, Senator Udall, led the delegation in introducing legislation in the Senate, and he's beginning to have real traction. And that's not to minimize Senator Udall. He's a well-respected, hard-working, and in my opinion, very effective member of the body, and he's a terrific senator. But like with many of these efforts, given that Congress is really, we're a lot stalled out. Although I'm optimistic about the future, we're stalled out so that these sorts of ideas just don't get traction. He's beginning to have real movement because I think the country's been saying we're tired of the status quo. We don't want this feeling like Congress is off to the highest bidder and that people are incentivized to continue to put dark money into politics. We don't want that. It's not even transparent anymore. And so there are now a series of House bills that I'm planning to co-sponsor that are being introduced that I'm feeling very excited about. Two, you should know, and I'm going to ask you to call our office, Beth, just make sure we've got your contact information so I can to you, or you can get on our website and just ask us to mail it to you. I think nearly every Democrat in the House, I would assume the same for the Senate, and I don't know how many Republicans, but I believe some, are on a publicly financed, individuals as they file their taxes can opt to help pay for publicly financing of campaigns. It's a really great piece of legislation. I don't think it'll get a hearing, frankly, anytime soon. But the benefit of that is that there's a global effort where everybody's on the same page to do something. And then finally, I've introduced legislation that would ban 501 social welfare organizations. They're called 501c4s, where almost half of their fundraising, 49%, can be for political purposes, and their donors don't have to be disclosed. So it's just dark money. And that's not what Congress intended. In fact, the IRS just decided on its own to allow that, and now we don't know how to even audit such a thing. They're implementing rules and a process to do that, and that's been controversial in Congress. But I've stayed the course with exclusive means exclusive. We don't need any more ways to have money engaged in politics. At the end of the day, we need more folks like you speaking up and saying this is not what we want in this country.
Michelle, I think one of the things that I didn't hear, and I love everything you hear. I love and support you. I've met you. We've talked. I love it. But people like that woman whose insurance is going up, and she paid $5, and now it's $80, and $200 and something for her medicines. They can't retire. I don't know that the everyday people understand how Citizens United has affected what she is now going through because of the insurance companies, because of their wheels and their deals and whatever else, and the politicians who make it possible for insurance companies to have exceptionally high rates. And that's just one tiny slice of the pie, as you well know. And I think that there really has to be an effort to make people open up their eyes and understand how it's hitting them personally, this amorphous Citizens United, which most of my people that I know, what's that? I don't know. That's nothing. It's politics. I don't care. I don't want to know. But it's personal. It's personal for the homeless. It's personal for everybody across the board. And I don't think people understand that this Citizens United is not just some law somewhere. They really need the education, and that is what I also would like you to add to your wonderful program and what you have going on. I feel a little bit better. Thank you.
So I will do that. You know, we do, and there's limitations now in an election year that are required here. We have very strict communication requirements. Perhaps we can do an updated educational piece about what Citizens United is, that basically, corporations are treated as the same in terms of each as an individual, and we'll re-educate individuals and then update folks about what's going on in Congress and what you can do about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay.
All right. Our next question is from Charlie. Charlie, you're on with the Congresswoman.
Hi, Charlie.
Hey, good afternoon. How's the weather out that way?
Well, it was really raining and incredibly thundering, but is that even incredibly thundering? I don't think that's even correct. I meant to do, 2 sentences, but I'll tell you, hostile rain weather in D.C., and I only hope that, except for the flooding part, I'm wanting that weather to be the same in New Mexico. I'm hoping that we have a good monsoon week. Is it raining in Albuquerque?
Well, it looks like it's trying. I'm up in the mountains. I'm south of Harris, about 6 miles. I think we're definitely going to get our afternoon shower here.
Okay, good. It looked like you got some good rain yesterday, too.
Yeah, we did. So, good deal. Well, I wanted to talk to you about the VA.
Okay.
I was curious as to whether your office had, attempted to find out how veterans in your district, how their care has been over there at the hospital.
We have. We actually did a town hall, and we had about 200 veterans come to the town hall, and I'm searching for the words because I don't know that I've been as distraught in this job in spite of the incredibly difficult and enormous issues that must be addressed that require tough choices and sacrifices. I don't know that I've seen a more or witnessed a more difficult set of circumstances. We had hundreds of vets tell personal stories of not only incredible wait times and the inability to access the right services at the right time, but family members who aren't getting access to information, truthfulness, support for caregiving, education, and the worst for me was the lack of total respect and dignity alleged by the veterans. And I have to tell you, I believe them. Since that time, we have written numerous letters, the delegations on numerous letters, requiring that basically the VA has got to get everybody seen. They've got to work with all the private sector folks in New Mexico and in the district to get everybody seen. We are working on legislation here that would provide more access to resources for private care when that's what veterans both choose and need. And that we're looking for more transparency and accountability. We don't want any more performance bonuses. We want more transparency. I will tell you that the VA, we've also passed legislation giving the VA more latitude administratively to fire people that aren't doing their job. I've asked for monitors, the DOJ to investigate. I had a call today. I want to know more about what's going, because we're going on per constituent. We've got about, for a while there, we were getting 100 new cases a week. I'm really concerned, and I'm very unhappy about the way the entire VA administration has responded not only to their constituents first, but to members of Congress second. You know, they're not providing us even regular, ready information and treating us as partners so that we can solve these problems for veterans.
Well, that doesn't sound very good. So I'm sitting here wondering, how will all of this affect me in the near term or in the long term?
Well, I hope that it affects you positively, because I think that when veterans complain about care, the first thing I hear as sort of a precursor to their statements and complaints is, this is not new. We've been complaining for decades. That's true. They have been complaining for decades. And for whatever reason, both Congress and the administration has been able to sort of, in a circular way, not change any of their practices, add the number of veterans to the system, not have sufficient resources, and just sort of continue to bury the problem. So they'll do sort of a short term, we're on this particular issue, like the 14-day wait time as an example. People complained for years that they didn't have immediate or productive access to care. They created a policy that you've got to be seen in 14 days. The problem is there were no resources, there were no changes in protocol, there was no changes in training, so that it became kind of a false access point, and that's how we got these secret waiting lists. So here's what it means. I think now Congress is really clear that we have to do short-term, immediate fixes, which include, for the first time, real accountability. For me, that means if there are members in Albuquerque, members in our region, members nationally, who have committed a crime in hiding information, denying access, not telling the truth about a budget, creating a patient care problem, that those individuals should be held accountable to the highest extent of the law. And we really haven't done that to the VA before. They've been kind of sacrosanct. No more. And then we need to get some immediate resources in to help bring in private sector responses until we catch up. Over the long term, we have to have a whole culture shift in the VA. We need a different practice approach. I think we need private sector peer review. We do that in the private sector. We have a peer review group that's privately funded. Their job is to look at what's going on, to take complaints, to make sure that the standard operating procedures make sense, particularly now that so many vets are returning with very significant health care issues that we're not equipped to deal with in the VA by itself or in the VA with its current funding. We have to make it a priority, and we have to get it fixed. And I am encouraged that Congress isn't just going to do a Band-Aid. They're going to do short-term and serious long-term fixes, which means you should expect to see investments in the VA and shifts in how we carry out that care every year, which is also going to mean not requiring veterans to travel such great distances and to have better partnerships with local providers across the country. That's also going to shore up the VA system, I think, for returning veterans over the long haul.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for calling in.
All right. Our next question is from Kathy. Kathy, you're now on the line.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. I'm doing really well today. How are you?
Good. Listen, my first thing I just wanted to say, I'm glad that Congress is definitely working on funding the VA more money, because actually I'm worked for the VA for 38 years and retired a few years ago, and ever since I worked there was always funding problems. And yes, there's administrative problems, but with the wars that we've been fighting, the funding has always lacked, and Congress never, ever funded enough. So I'm glad to see that finally something's going to happen, and maybe a lot of these problems will, go by the wayside when these things happen. So let's hope that it does. But that wasn't my question. I just wanted to say I'm glad that that's happening.
Good. And
but
I just wanted to thank you for your work at the VA.
Thanks. Because there's a lot of hardworking people there.
That's right.
They care for the veterans. Sometimes it's like going to work with your hands tied behind your back when you don't have the funding or the resources to be able to do what you want to do. So, hopefully everything is going to work, to the veterans' benefit, because I think most everybody that works there, that's what they want. So, but my big concern is the mentally ill homeless. And back in the 80s, there was enough, psychiatric facilities, residential care. Now there is not. And here in New Mexico, it's getting worse. So, this is such a national problem with the mentally ill, especially the mentally ill homeless. Is Congress working on, getting any funding for, programs that are needed?
So yes. Now that's the good news. So there are many advocates, bipartisan, working on behavioral health issues and funding initiatives, and that's wonderful. But it's not moving, right? Here's my optimism about Congress. When I got to Congress my first year, we couldn't even reauthorize basic things like the Violence Against Women's Act. I mean, everything was stalled, and I know that I'm just repeating what you already know. And it led to a government shutdown. We couldn't get anything done. It's just this huge divide over the Affordable Care Act and what we wanted to do in terms of entitlements, which is nothing. The status quo, just fight about it. That is not meaningful for anyone. So we don't do anything in terms of passing bills, but in fact, this second year, we are now at least reauthorizing all of the appropriations, and we're reauthorizing, this week or beginning of next week, we'll do the Highway Trust Fund, and we're going to actually extend it so it doesn't expire, and then no funding can go out, but we don't do the heavy work to figure out how we're going to fund it. So behavioral health, there's not been parity, even though Senator Domenici worked on the very first mental health parity laws for exactly that reason in the insurance industry, because we closed all of our institutions and then did nothing about home and community-based services that would meet the needs of a behavioral health community. The same thing goes for the state. Our state, I'm very upset at the state of New Mexico. I am still fighting against the fact that this administration in New Mexico canceled the contracts of 100% of our behavioral health providers after we found out from the state auditor's office that there are no credible allegations of fraud anywhere. We've lost, based on the data that I have that's been submitted to my office, half the patient access is continuing. So the other half of those patients don't have behavioral health access. We need millions of dollars invested at the state level. We need hundreds of millions, if not billions, invested from the federal level. And if we aren't willing to do that, we're going to see these public safety issues and very unfair, inappropriate situations to the individuals who can't get access to the appropriate care. And what's happening is we're treating behavioral health only in one place in this country, and it's in our jails, because you've got a mental health issue, you have to self-medicate. That means that you've got a substance abuse problem. That means that you are arrested, and then we're trying to treat that in jail, and when you're out, we don't have any continuity of care. I am pleased then to report the following things. The city of Albuquerque's put a little money in. We've been lobbying and advocating for that as well. The county's putting more money into behavioral health. I'm bringing the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I've brought them in twice. I'm bringing them back to New Mexico again in August for 2 days. We're going to go look at our behavioral health provider access points. We're going to go to the rural areas. We're going to talk about the growing number of homeless issues. And there I am making it clear to them that my expectation is they have to enforce the state requirements that they are closing the gap in those services based on their proposals in Medicaid. And I'm not going to stop until I'm clear that CMS has done that at a minimum. And then I'm optimistic in 2015 as the economy is getting better in the country, not quite in New Mexico, but I'm optimistic about that too, that we're going to have more robust opportunities to invest in areas that will make a real difference in our communities. And I am dedicated to behavioral health services, no question.
That is great. I hope so, because it's a sad situation now. So thank you for your work on doing that.
You are welcome, and thank you for your concern and compassion. I'm grateful.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Kenny. Kenny, you're on the line.
Okay. Hello?
Kenny, this is Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm talking to you today. My question is, what are you going to do to work with the administration to stem this tide of illegal alien crossing? Friday, Joe Biden was in Guatemala City talking to the leaders of the Central American countries that we're getting children from, and one of the things that was discussed in that was the president of Honduras. Let me find his name here. Jorge Ramon Hernandez, through his representative, said, as long as U.S. immigration reform is not approved, the exodus of children to the United States will continue, which pretty much means they're holding us hostage with their children. This whole thing is a nightmare. To allow children to travel anywhere unaccompanied is completely wrong on the parents' side, on the side of the country they came from, and the country here. We need to tell them, stop this. We're going to send you back. President Obama, all he has to do is call the man and say, we can't take any more. We're done. We need to end this.
Well, I think he's been pretty. I'm sorry. I get sometimes I jump the gun, and I did not mean to interrupt you.
Well, now that you have, go ahead and tell me what you think.
All right. Sorry about that. That was not intentional. And so if you think about what your last component was, you just interrupt me. And thank you for your patience with me. So this president actually has been very assertive now about saying, and notice I inserted the word now, about having the administration visit these countries, about sending very strong messages to the administration directly and through Homeland Security that these children have got to stop coming, whether they're unaccompanied as minors or they're coming with one parent. I agree that until we have something, that's got to be the message. I do want to tell you a story, and then I will tell you something more substantive if you've got the patience for that, and I appreciate you. That it is hard for me as a parent to understand and to comprehend what you would have to be thinking to send a 5-year-old alone on a treacherous trip with strangers to a country that is not going to let them stay because they have immigrated here illegally, or they haven't done an immigration effort. They've just illegally crossed the border. And I think it was Catholic Charities, some nuns, and some other folks visited Congress last week, and I had the opportunity to meet with some of those folks and then also meet with members of Congress who would have these meetings. And in one family in particular, they talked about the story and brought photographs of a family in Honduras. They start recruiting children to be part of the drug cartel gangs as early as 7. I think the young man in question was like 11, and he refused, and he'd been refusing to join the cartel. And as an example to the community and the family and other families, they didn't just harm and kidnap the 11-year-old, they took the whole family. They kidnapped them, they tortured them, they mutilated them, and they put their body parts out in the town square as a message to all the other families. Now, I know as an American, because we don't live in that kind of fear in our country, it's hard to contemplate what you would do as a family member or a parent. You would do anything to get your children away from that situation. Which leads me to conversations that are now happening in Congress that we have not been paying attention in the way that maybe we should have been to Latin American countries, that there is a growing problem. I mean, we have already, in this country, George Bush in 2002 provided amnesty to individuals who were illegally immigrating here from Nicaragua for the same kinds of issues. Not exactly, but similar human rights violations. I think that the president's got to do three things. He's doing one of them. Now, it remains to be seen how successful he is, and Congress is going to have to be ready to support him. Strong messages that they cannot send these children unprotected or at all to the United States. That there is no amnesty or legal status protection here. There is no automatic status for refugees. That does not happen here, and they can't do it. Two, there's got to be some new foreign policy about what we're going to do so that we can hold that and create an environment where parents aren't just sending all these children. Three, we do have to re-educate, I think, our constituents that the law today requires that we detain, have an administrative hearing, actually review whether any of them meet a refugee status. That's the law in the books. And if they do, that's a different set of treatments. And then we have to figure out, as we're providing humanitarian relief while they're here, just exactly how we get them back and what should our presence be, perhaps, inside those countries. Because clearly having a border presence alone isn't sufficient, because that's not working. And lastly, the longer we ignore immigration policy for people here, I think that we continue to have real difficulties in having any kind of policy that people really respect, because it's not clear what any of our immigration policies are or aren't, and what our border issues are or aren't. And I will tell you that both Republicans and Democrats have identified both positively and negatively that this administration has engaged in more deportations than any other president to date. And I just want to, that's not for me to try to get you to think that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but just to put that fact out, that we're spending a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of money deporting, before you get to these kids, a whole lot of folks, because we have not done anything sufficient that stems this tide of illegal immigration into the country.
Now, I want to respectfully disagree with you on him being the president who's deported more people. That's the official line, but that's pure BS.
All right.
We are not the world.
Tell me why you think facts aren't right.
I'm just that has problems and solve them for him. Please, I did not interrupt you. Please listen.
All right. Sorry about that.
We're not police. We cannot go to other countries and tell them to change their laws or their lifestyles. America is a life raft for freedom, and it is just about full. If you take all the people who are under those situations around the world or Central America, the life raft will swamp, and we all go down.
So, given that, what's your suggestion?
More deportation under Obama is causing more illegal alien travel here. Those two things don't square.
So you think that and I'm not challenging you. So you believe that the number of deportations is not accurate, that they're lower now, and the fact that we don't deport enough is the reason people are coming?
They can say whatever they want. It's all lies.
Well, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you about that, and I don't think that deportations, because we've been doing deportations for decades, and it's done nothing, Republican, Democrat alike. So it's not a political statement. A deportation policy has not stemmed immigration to this country from anywhere. Repatriation, as far as I know, historically, under any administration, it's never been debated as the thing in Congress that would make a difference. It's never made a difference by itself, as far as I know, and we're doing a fair amount of research in any administration. So I'd have to disagree that if you were to step up, so we'll just sort of lay aside that irrespective of whether my fact base is accurate or yours, that deportations are up or down, that policy in and of itself does anything. And I think that if you just ignore what goes on around the world, I mean, with that kind of approach, one could make the argument that we don't need a military or a Department of Defense or a Homeland Security, that we just do everything domestically and hope the rest of the world is okay, except that we have a global economy, shifts with the world, and if we did sure how that could possibly work.
That's not at all what I'm saying.
Okay.
All that I'm saying is we have laws already, and we've had laws for decades, and we choose to ignore to enforce them, and that is what's causing this. We have laws that already for decades that control this, and we are ignoring them currently. We can ignore those laws, but then we won't ignore other laws that benefit the ideology.
Well, I appreciate your point of view, and I really appreciate that you took the time to talk to me about this. And I am very concerned about immigration issues and policy, and I'm going to keep your thoughts and your perspectives in mind as I deliberate about what are the best things to do as we move forward in Congress and in these border states. And again, I respect your difference of my opinion and the time that you spent with me today. Thank you.
The saddest part is the children pay the price.
Okay, our next question is, this will be our last question, and this goes to Emily.
Hello.
Hi, Emily.
Hi. I've felt discouraged about the way nobody seems to be able to get along in Washington, and how it's just always blame and shame and who's wrong and who's right. And I'm just wondering what an ordinary citizen can do to encourage collaboration instead of all of the fighting that's been going on.
Well, you're doing it. Thank you for making that statement and being on this call. So I don't know if you've been on for the entire time, but while I admit as a new person in Congress, there is real dysfunction, and that we aren't getting nearly enough work done that would make a difference in this country. But something I was surprised to learn as a new member, that like you, I got information from media outlets and social media, and it painted a picture of Congress where everyone is hostile and angry, and there's no way we could ever close some of those divides. And I have to tell you, I don't feel that way anymore. Now, I don't want to tell you that tomorrow we're going to be able to pass the most meaningful legislation, but women, having a gender balance here, and I would love to see more women voting and electing members, both parties, to Congress. Bicameral, the Senate and the House, bipartisan, women have brokered every major deal, and after 3 years in a row, even before I got here, of the 2 years directly preceding my getting elected, I'm very honored and humbled to have had this opportunity. And then this is the first year that we're actually starting to pass legislation. Now, more of it sort of going through the motions of reauthorizing our departments and appropriations, and everything's status quo, but we are beginning to have conversations again. That was entirely missing, and I am really hopeful that by 2015, after this election cycle, that we'll do a better job about finding a way to work together. There are some things that really minimize, particularly in the House, our ability to do that. And I mean no disrespect for the Tea Party. They represent their constituents. They've been elected into office. They have the same rights here as I do or anyone else. But with a really narrow third faction, when you try to go to the lowest common denominator, there isn't one. That's really minimized any negotiated kind of efforts. We used to really negotiate in Congress. Two, they created a new process in the last couple of years where bills don't get debated. They just go right to the floor if they ever get there, and it's an up or down vote. So we're not having a dialogue about these ideas. There's not a kind of a genuineness in trying to figure out how to solve problems. That's starting to, I just passed a couple of bills and an amendment which freshmen can't do, and certainly the Democratic minority can't do, but if I'm doing it, it is an indication that things are beginning to change. We're beginning to debate those bills. What an average citizen like you can do in addition is, we need people not to get their facts about what's going on from the media. You know, I spend a lot of time, people just don't believe me. They think that, my health care is free, I get retirement for life already, right now, and I don't get it at all. I'd have to work for 30 years, I'd have to meet all the requirements that any federal employee would, and we should. We should probably have to do even more than a regular federal employee by virtue of the honor of having this incredible public office. But when an incorrect statement is made on purpose to sort of fan the flame, and I mean this by both, more progressive liberal media and by media, it just creates the impression that we can't get along, that we're completely, obviously, always dysfunctional, that we're always poking at each other, and that's not really true. And Congress needs a schedule where we're spending more time in session, and that's a whole other thing.
Amen.
Finance reform and less time, but I fly home every weekend, and this is twofold. I do that because until Congress can do a better job, I can do more for my constituents on the ground at home. So I'm going to keep doing that. But if we don't find a way to make those averages a little better, I think you're going to continue to be frustrated. So tell more people to go out there and vote who they think is going to do the right job. Think about those gender balances, because that's making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud of Republican and Democratic women in both chambers. They've been incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And that we need a Congress that is incentivized to work together, and maybe that is changing the schedules and having districts say, until you accomplish X, you have to stay in session. And there are things that we could do, and your voice really does make a difference in that regard. It does.
Well, thank you. That's at least encouraging. And I know I've read about the women who get together from all the parties, both parties. I don't know if there are any Tea Party women. I don't remember that at all.
There are in the Women's Caucus, and I will tell you that, there are some. We're allowed to come together after work hours. Like there's a bipartisan women's softball team, and then there's some other social groups who actually get together and raise awareness for charitable issues, actually have their presence help fundraising efforts. The softball team is for breast cancer survivors and their families. But there are several Tea Party Republicans on the softball team, and I have to tell you, they're kind, they're passionate. We have found things that we can work on together because we're spending a little bit of time outside of that kind of scrutiny on the floor that can often kind of under pretense create that animosity. If you get to know someone and what their constituents have as their issues, sometimes I can help that member find clarity in what their priorities are, and they can give me a sense about about what clarity in the same regard in my districts. And so I think there's real hope, because I do think that women are here, and this is going to sound disparaging to men, and I don't mean that. You need both. A unilateral effort by any gender, any priority, any expertise would be a problem here. You want diversity in Congress. But if we can get that diversity so that you have people who are here really working to make a difference, then in fact collectively we can and will.
May I ask, where should we be getting information if I'm not getting it from national news and I don't like sitting at my computer for any length of time? I don't read blogs or other news things on the computer. Where should I be getting that information about what's actually happening?
I'll tell you, that's the best question about this issue I've gotten in a long time. I don't know that I've got a great answer for you. I don't think it ought to be the cable news shows, because it's not news, it's really opinion.
I don't have cable. I ignore that completely.
You're already in the first place. I think that the best way to get information is to focus it on the issues immediately that you care about. go to your member of Congress. You can, and that we're really required to give you both sides, let you know what's going on. We go to nonpartisan groups inside the Capitol and outside to give us facts and information. And I think the best thing to do is to utilize us in that regard to do the fact checking with you, so that you can then make up your own mind about what's going on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for caring.
Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time. For those who are still waiting on their questions, please stay on the line. After the call is concluded, you'll be prompted to leave a voicemail, and we'll follow up with you soon. If you have any questions or if you require assistance, please contact our office at 505-346-6781. Now I'd like to invite the Congresswoman to say a few closing words.
I just want to thank everyone. I know these teletown halls, you're waiting, we can't get to everyone, but they really make a difference for us. I appreciate that you're participating, that you're helping us represent the district in the most meaningful way. I also appreciate your courage in telling your personal opinions and stories. That's incredibly helpful, and I want everyone to have a great week, and I'm looking forward to coming back to Albuquerque on Friday. Thanks again for your time and participation.